Test. Hello, everyone. It's been a while since I've posted. I've been procrastinating a little bit on this specific post on Western Union, but I think it's an interesting company. I have had a couple past ideas on Nike and Brown Forman, um, and I have write-ups for those, so I may make new videos on that. But I wanted to do Western Union because it's really, really stereotyped to be like a horrible company. And I actually think they have a powerful brand. And maybe by the end of this short video, you'll also think that. So here is a short little write-up. So if you just want to sort of like read through it, I'm just going to give it like a brief overview of the actual text. So basically, the way they work is that they have like kind of an arbitrage system where they increase the exchange rate to allow them to basically sell currencies on the open market at a profit, and the currencies that they get are from individuals making international money transfers. So in short, they're an international money transfer business. They are a clearinghouse. They also take deposits. They also take prepaid transfers, and they also make money on fees. So if you're a sender, you would pay a fee to Western Union before you're sending your money from United States to Jamaica. So they have also investment income. The investment income is from their settlement assets, which are basically like escrow funds um, before the transfer is actually made. So that's known as float, and that's something Warren Buffett always looked for instance, in his blue chip company, from about, I think he invested in that in around the early 70s, I think the shareholder letters say. And they also get investment income, the Western Union company that is, on deposits basically made by customers that are more long term, and that's like prepaid cards, etc. And they have a more long term investment strategy with that in equities. So it's interesting that that's what they're doing with it. They have very, very little operating assets. Like I said, they basically just move money around. They have strong cash flows. They recently had some massive drop in cash flow, but it was only because of a non-recurring deduction of income from taxes. So, in other words, the cash flow statement will deduct from the net income charges, or excuse me, benefits and revenues that are not really operational, that are not typical business day to day. So this was a massive uh, this was a massive example of that. Their effective tax rate went from about 20 to negative 50, which means that they had a huge tax benefit, and that was deducted from their net income to get a significantly reduced operational cash flow. But if you average out, even with the even with the tax benefit eating away at operating cash flow, you get $600 million annually. And then if you calculate capex at 135, uh, when they're focused on information technology, then it it's not a maintenance type of capex, so you wouldn't actually deduct it. This is actually wrong. You wouldn't deduct it from operational cash flow, because if it's used to grow the business, that can be seen as an investment into that's actually priced into what you pay for the stock already. So that's part of the returns that you get. And so the actual cash flow that you calculate based on free cash flow which is the money going into the owner's pocket, is what's actually used for expenses on the business. You wouldn't in other words, you wouldn't punish a company for investing in growth. And so if you actually calculate free cash flow like that. And even if you didn't, you still get a good value. You get $0.6 billion, which is the same as the operating cash flow, implying a free cash flow yield of 30%. If in a scenario we deducted from 0.6 all of their growth capex, you get 0.5, and if the stock is at, that would probably reduce it to like 20%. So you have a large margin of safety there with a very high yield. So you can imagine buying this company is like buying a 28% yielding coupon. An interest expense of about 0.1 billion means that they have a very good financial condition. They also own equities, like I said. They own sort of small portions, 20% stakes, and this is all their float invested into either treasury securities or equities. The treasury securities are A rated or better, or excuse me, A minus or better, and that includes like municipal bonds and things like that. They also have a shareholder return program, and that's mostly share repurchases and dividends. This is really good because that just makes your actual share value go up because there's less shares, and the value per share increases when there's fewer shares and the same market cap is available. So they do this because they don't need to pay for a lot of maintenance and a lot of operational expense. So that's an advantage of working with a capital light business like Western Union. They have a strong financial condition. Like I said, they have a very, very high interest coverage ratio. So in other words, they can pay off their debts very easily. And they have stable outlooks by all of the investment rating companies, agencies. They're also an interesting play in a debt crisis. The United States right now has something like $35 trillion in debt. Our interest payments are getting, massive, and that can easily kind of become a spiraling effect of higher rates because of our higher debt, higher inflation, and you kind of like have to beat the inflation with the interest rates, and then the higher interest rates also induce inflation because that means that their debt is much more valuable, or their debt interest payments are much more valuable. So having that spiraling up effect, you can get massive interest rate spikes. And if there's a debt crisis in that scenario, Western Union has the currencies of almost no other company because they do international money transfers. They have 12 currencies. And while they're denominated in dollars, they have derivatives on the dollar, and they're highly hedged. So any type of currency depreciation on the United States' part or any other country, they would be in a pretty good position relative to other businesses. They also have a very strong brand strength. You ask anyone, even in the United States, and they know of Western Union. Outside the United States, they would as well, because most of the business of the company is outside the United States. It's about 2.7 billion outside and 1 billion inside the domestic country. 500,000 global agent locations, so they're kind of all over the place. Now, it's sort of a moderate to weak switching cost and also stickiness, but it's also, a matter of like, who would you be trusting to like give international money transfers? Is it going to be a cryptocurrency, decentralized system protocol where you have potentially like people who can corrupt or hijack the system using, like, let's say, enough voting power? There's a whole lot of risks in crypto that haven't been weeded out yet, and so if you have a centralized business that already has a good financial condition, you don't have to worry about your accounts getting freezed or it getting hacked and things like this as much, because there's a central control and a central decision-making power. So that introduces trust because it's an actual brand. It's not just a protocol or a decentralized network. So I sort of talked about crypto, and that's it. Western Union's an interesting business as well because their net income really hasn't changed, even though their revenue has decreased significantly. So if we look at their actual stock, they've gone down about 50%, or excuse me, 62%. Let's see, 65% since 2021. The reason is because if you look at their revenues, it's been declining. Let's see, Western Union revenue. So their revenues went from quarterly of 1.4 to quarterly 1 billion. Now, what's interesting about this, though, is now if you look at their net income, excuse the advertisement. Okay, if you look at their net income, their quarterly net income has stayed stable, which is at around $140 million. So basically what this shows you is it's such a profitable business that the revenue decreasing doesn't matter. And I already pointed that out earlier because I showed how capital light it is and how they don't need to really pay for much maintenance since they just move money around. So this is kind of a classic Buffett buy in my opinion. Like it has float, and its revenue decreasing, and yet it's a very profitable business. I can give the example of Sirius XM or any or Blue Chip as revenue declining businesses, but still good investments because of how many cents on the dollar they return to the owner. And you look at their shares outstanding. Each share that you own increases in value per year just by virtue of there being less shares to go around, less supply, and that's pretty much it. They right now are on a PE ratio of about 2, which means that people not only think this company isn't going to grow, but it's going to just decline and decline and decline, I guess, pretty much go out of business. They have, very little debt, so that doesn't make sense that they would really go bankrupt right now. But yeah, I mean, it's a very, very cheap PE ratio stock for a pretty strong brand. And I don't think this company will grow significantly because, like international money transfer has a commoditized nature about it, but they are making investments into information technology and websites and even crypto. And so, they can sort of adapt to the technology and all the claims on Wall Street that Western Union is, this kind of primitive, archaic company. It's been around. How long has it been around? Track record. No. Founding 1851, so it's a really old company. This is sort of the classic like Wall Street, disbelief in an old brand being able to sort of change with the times. And in future videos, I'll talk about how a similar thing happened with Brown-Forman, which is still a potentially good price, and even Nike, which is not even like that old of a stock or old of a company, and people still think that they're like, obsolete, they're outdated, the On and Hokas of the world will come and take over the company. Ridiculous things for a company that has more than 50% market share of athletic shoes. So that's all for this video. Hope you have a good day.